everyone. In this module, I will be explaining the third part of typical questions from investors. In addition, this is the final session, and we will be wrapping up this program as well. In the previous session, I explained frequently asked questions for startups around the seed stage, which are customers, competitive advantage, as well as products. This time, we will go a step further and discuss 3 questions that are frequently asked around Series A. They are traction, growth, and financials. I will explain them in order. First up is traction. This is a question you will always be asked when you pitch in order to raise funds during Series A. Investors tend to make investment decisions based on traction. And depending on your traction numbers, you will be in an advantageous position. So please prepare well for this. How many inquiries do you have on a weekly basis? The number of inquiries from customers is the basis of traction. Especially in B2B, it is unlikely that your customer will sign a contract with you without making any inquiries. If you are receiving constant inquiries and the number is always increasing, it means that your sales and marketing efforts are going well. Therefore, instead of simply answering this question as, on average, 10 inquiries per week, you should explain that the number of inquiries increased after you change your sales methods or marketing or the UI of your website. So please make sure to briefly explain the measures that you are taking to increase the number of inquiries. Explain your conversion rate. As with inquiries, there are usually several steps before a customer pays to use your service. For example, in a software as a service business, the steps include visiting a website, signing up for a trial, starting a paid subscription, and renewing a contract. Therefore, the purpose of this question is to find out whether you are taking measures to prevent customers from dropping out at each stage of the process before they pay to use your service. Most conversion rate problems can be traced back to the user interface. So instead of simply answering, the conversion rate is 3%, you should explain, as a result of experimenting with the call to action function in the initial mockup, it has increased to 3% in the beta version. And you may also add what you plan to do to further improve after raising funds, such as we plan to increase customer support efforts, such as a 24 hours live chat to increase conversion rates to 6%. Share your iteration in terms of customer journey, and also candidly share your plan to make it better after fundraising. How many paying customers do you have? For this question, do not just provide your current numbers. Instead, explain the progress that you have made since launch. To achieve product market fit, you must have communicated with customers every day and improved your services. During that process, there must have been a trigger to increase the number of paying customers. For example, Airbnb has a story where weekly sales doubled after they started having professional photographers take photos of the properties that they listed on their platform. In this way, rather than simply answering with numbers, please explain with specific examples of how you have discovered the secret to rapid growth through numerous dialogues with customers. Have you already obtained an ROI? This is a question for B2B startups, particularly in the case of deep tech and hardware products. Product development takes time, so in their business development, they bring a prototype, and if the customer is keen, the customer will then sign a letter of intent, saying, "We agree to buy the product once it is completed." If you do not have any ROIs when you pitch to investors, no one will invest. Without an ROI, it's just a verbal agreement which will not take you to anywhere that you want to. The customer doesn't sign a written memorandum. They aren't really interested in your product. So please get at least 2 to 3 ROIs before meeting your investors. What is the typical sales cycle from inquiry to actual sales? This is also a question primarily for B2B startups. Unlike B2C, where the user and the person paying are the same person, in B2B, they are often different. In other words, the decision-making process is very complex. So this question is to find out whether you have sufficient understanding about the decision-making behind your customer's purchase. Therefore, for this question, instead of just providing a specific cycle, like 3 months or 6 months, you should also explain the industry decision-making process of your typical paying customer. For example, in the case of a Japanese automaker, if the first point of contact shows interest, it will take about 4 months to go through a review by middle management and get signed by a decision maker, and about 1 month to complete vendor registration. Payment is due 1 month after signing the contract. It will be better if you can explain your additional efforts, such as, in addition to our main customer, we have started approaching foreign IT companies, and we expect to obtain a signed contract with them in about 3 months. This is a shorter sales cycle, and to better manage our cash flow, we plan to increase this type of clientele moving forward. Next are questions about growth. You will be asked this question if you are looking to raise Series A funding. As explained earlier, Series A funding is to achieve rapid growth after product market fit, so please be well prepared. What is your growth rate? This is a question for startups that already have sales from paying customers. If you are aiming for Series A funding, you should already have sales. For example, if your revenue in April was $10,000 and your revenue in May was $12,000. The growth rate is 20%. This is a very important indicator for investors. A stable growth rate means that sales will grow on a J-curve, typical of startups. If the monthly growth rate is consistently at 20% and the number increases each month, that 20% will become a larger number. These are basic numbers, so be sure to answer clearly. Where do new customers come from? This is a question to find out if your channel strategy is in place after lots of trial and error. Whether your business is a B2C or a B2B, you should know which channel is useful in acquiring new customers. Describe the most effective channels that you have tried and identified as useful, such as content marketing, SEO, trade shows, inside sales, and so on. Explain what you did to improve conversion rate. As I have explained in the segment about traction, there are usually several steps before a customer pays you. In order for you to grow, there must be no bottlenecks in this process. While it is true that a product's UI plays a big role, there are also other important things to take note. For example, when interacting with a customer, you have to reply to inquiries from them. This is usually done by email, and you must have the data, which tells you what type of responses and the timing of the responses which will most likely lead to a trial. Some customers may prefer to have a conversation rather than just exchanging emails. This all depends on the type of product and customer. Therefore, for this question, please explain the effective measures for converting customers into paying customers that you have discovered through iterations of your products. How much does your customer acquisition cost? Generally speaking, it is considered a good business model for a startup to have sales that are at least 3 times higher than the customer acquisition cost. For example, if your sales manager with a monthly salary of $10,000 gets one $100,000 contract in 6 months, the CAC is $60,000, and the sales are 1.6 times of that. On the other hand, if a part-time student with a monthly salary of $1,000 makes cold calls and obtains 5 contracts in 1 month that pays $3,000 a year, the CAC is $1,000 and the sales are 15 times higher. Although it depends on the type of product that you offer and the unit price, a business that highly depends on the specific people may not be seen as scalable. If you can create a model that does not depend on specific people, such as organizing part-time student workers, it will be judged that the possibility of scaling is high. There are many other ways to acquire customers other than direct sales, such as advertising, exhibitions, or referrals. Explain how you are acquiring customers efficiently in a way that suits your business. 6 months from now, what's going to be your biggest challenge to further growth? This question is to find out why you want to raise funds. For example, a statement such as, "We are overwhelmed with inquiries, so we need to triple the number of servers." This may seem like a problem at first glance, but it is a happy problem. Big challenges will provide big opportunities. So please explain these types of situations. Additionally, they will definitely ask about your financials. The key metrics that you focus on? This is a question to find out whether you understand the metrics necessary for your business to profit and are tracking them properly. For example, for enterprise businesses, key metrics are the number of contracts and the number of customers. For software as a service businesses, it will be MRR, or monthly recurring revenue, and ARR, annual recurring revenue. For advertising businesses, it will be DAU, daily active users, or MAU, monthly active users. Metrics directly link with how your business model will generate profits, so make sure to understand properly and answer clearly. What is your burn rate? Burn rate is the number of cash out minus cash in. For example, let's say you have $20,000 in expenses and $10,000 in revenue this month. In this case, your company's burn rate is $10,000. No complicated calculations are required. Just calculate the difference between your income and expenses. Since you may happen to have a large expense in a particular month, it is a good idea to calculate your average burn rate over a 3-month period. These are very basic numbers, so you need to be able to answer them clearly. What is your runway? Runway means the period of time until the cash runs out. So, this is a question to find out how long your company can survive without investment. Your bank balance divided by your average burn rate is the number of months that your company will have before it runs out of cash. For example, if your bank balance is $200,000 and your burn rate is $20,000, your runway is 10 months. If you are in a situation where you can survive on your own for a certain period of time without raising funds, you may be able to raise funds advantageously. On the other hand, it is disadvantageous and even risky to do fundraising when the runway is less than 6 months. If you fail to raise funds, there is little time left to bring your company back onto track and lead it to success. In a situation where the company will go bankrupt if it cannot raise funds, the terms would be very poor, even if you are able to receive investment. So start fundraising with at least a year of runway. What are your company's 3-year projections? This is a question to find out whether you have a realistic growth plan. When investors, and especially VCs, invest around Series A, rapid growth is expected, so you need to have numbers which are big enough and also realistic and substantiated with reasons. Explain logically how much sales can be expected in 3 years and what resources will be needed and when. When will the company get to profitability? This question is to find out whether your company is alive by default or vice versa, dead by default. In other words, they would like to know if you have enough cash to be profitable as long as your expenses remain constant and your revenue growth continues as you have predicted. For example, let's say you predicted that you would need $150,000 to become profitable and that it would take 2 years. In this case, if you only have $100,000 in your bank account, you need to either increase your revenue or cut your expenses. You must understand the process that leads to profitability and to demonstrate to investors that you are someone who can make progress while understanding the basic numbers. And now, all 12 sessions are completed. This program has covered the points that you need to know in order to launch and grow your startup, from choosing the problem to tackling the typical questions from investors. Please watch this video lecture repeatedly during the course of your startup journey. I hope that the many aspiring entrepreneurs among the audience of this program have benefited and will become great entrepreneurs. Thank you very much for watching, and all the best for your startup journey.